Shalom, Israel. How y'all doing? I'm Brother Izar Allah, and to my left is
Shamar Yahweh.
And today we're going to go over the 4th of July. Why we shouldn't celebrate. The 4th of July, fighting for freedom in captivity. How many of y'all believe we in captivity? Okay, show of hands. By show of hands, that's everybody. But I know a lot of people in the world, they don't believe we in captivity. So we're going to show that we are in captivity, fighting for our freedom. How many of y'all peoples today, went to the store and getting a whole bunch of groceries and stuff for tomorrow? Y'all got family and friends that's not in this truth that's celebrating the 4th of July. So, yeah, they out. The store today was ridiculously packed, as if we not being killed and slaughtered in the streets, as if we were free during 1776, July 4th, which we weren't. And we're going to show y'all that. So let's go to the PowerPoint out. You want to ask a question? Give him.
You got it.
Hold up. Let's get the mic.
Israel has nothing to do with the 4th of July.
Absolutely.
That was between their own people. Okay, and where all these firecrackers come from is when they fired the cannon after the so-called pilgrims that came over here from England won the war with their own people. So the 4th of July has nothing to do with us at all.
That's absolutely correct, man. We're going to show that, too. Because a lot of our people, they out celebrating, having fun, doing what they want to do, right? But at the same time, celebrating their own brothers, their own people's destruction, which the Most High hates. So let's go to the PowerPoint out. All right, so 4th of July, fighting for freedom in captivity, which that's the question I asked. Because we are indeed in captivity. How many of y'all should celebrate it, though? Just about everybody here, right? Because it was done by games, food, eating, family and friends, like we all coming together. Because I had a brother the other day tell me, man, you celebrating 4th? No, man, I'm not doing that. You know I am not doing it. He was like, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to cook my food before the 4th. Like, you still celebrating it? Because you're doing it in remembrance of what they fought for, not your people. So we go to the next one. Let's go to this scripture right here.
Baruch chapter 3, verse 38. Behold, we are yet this day in our captivity.
That's why I asked it, who believe that we are in captivity? We are indeed in captivity to this very day. And I'm going to show you why and how we are in captivity. But go ahead.
Where thou hast scattered us.
So the Most High, he scattered us here, right? We all know about Deuteronomy 28:68. He said, I'm going to set you in them ships. Why? Because of our disobedience. So he kicked us out of the land and brought us into captivity by way of cargo slave ships. But go ahead.
For a reproach and a curse, and to be subject to payments.
So we subject to payments. Y'all know chattel slavery, right? To this very day, we are still suffering from chattel slavery. We are subject to payments. That's what makes you a slave in today's world. You got a birth certificate. You got a Social Security card, which is publicly traded on the NASDAQ.
Taxes.
You get taxed before you get your money when you work. You get taxed after you get your money when you work. You get taxed when you go to the grocery store. You get taxed on your car. Taxed on everything you buy. You even get taxed on saving your money after you already been taxed and you work for it. That's crazy. But that's the subject and the reproach of the curses that we will suffer because we disobeyed the Most High. But we are indeed in captivity. So go ahead.
According to all the iniquities of our fathers.
He said, according to all the iniquities of our fathers were supposed to teach us the law, statutes, and covenant of the Most High, not the ways of this wicked world. But go ahead.
Which departed from the Lord our God.
See, that hurt us, departing from the Most High. Like you got people out here today protesting. Our forefathers didn't protest the way our people protest today. Hands up, don't shoot. They had swords and knives in their hands when they went to protest. That's all Esau did too. That's the best way they know how to protest. And I'm going to show you that. But let's get to this next slide. We love the display of fireworks, right? See little man out there chilling, he watching the fireworks. You see the couple on the motorcycle over there? This is what we like. It's 4th of July. We free, but we ain't free. But go ahead. Let me get to the next slide. Let's get this scripture, y'all.
Ezekiel chapter 3 and verse 11. And go, get thee to them of the captivity.
Are white folks in captivity? Are Chinese people in captivity? Are Arabs in captivity? Are Africans in captivity? Are the East Indians in captivity? So who's in captivity according to world history and according to the Bible? Israel. The so-called African Americans, Latinos, and Native Americans. We are in captivity. But go ahead.
Unto the children of thy people.
He said, thy people. He didn't say go tell this to everybody. Go warn them. The ones that don't know who they are. The ones that think they free. But go ahead.
And tell them, thus saith the Lord God, whether they will hear or whether they will forbear.
So we got to preach this word in season, out of season. If we just get one that's going to hear it, we done our job. He said whether they hear or whether they forbear it. So let's listen to this clip right here. Hey, Ron, it's not playing, all right? Why it's not playing? Huh?
I think that's just a picture. The actual video has a play at the bottom. I think that's just a picture of the slide. I don't know if it transferred over properly.
I transferred it over.
Bear with us one moment.
This. I could just play it out loud if it's not gonna play, but that would lead a screen in. All right, so it's the video not working, so I'm gonna play it out loud for everybody. But I'm gonna play it over the mic. But this brother, he came with some real pertinent information that we as a nation of people need to take heed to this warning.
As follows, comrades. This is an early alert of supposed activity this weekend on the 4th of July that would cause harm to our people on a very large scale.
So this is supposed to happen this weekend.
The Huey P. Newton Gun Club has received intel from two credible sources that multiple white nationalist groups / militias are planning a nationwide attack on all of our people over the 4th of July weekend. The sources could not confirm the motives of the nationalists, but they might be tied to the events that have recently happened with the taking down of Confederate symbols across the United States and the retaliation against police brutality across the United States as well. We as a preparedness group should take this threat very seriously for two reasons. One, for the events that have sparked the epicenter in Minnesota with the murder of George Floyd and the sudden spike of Klan recruitment in the southern states the past 3 months. Please do not take this threat lightly, okay? Over the past couple of months, there has definitely been a spike in recruitment in this area.
I'm going to pause it for a second. Y'all know out here in California, they hung a brother in Palmdale and Lancaster. That's 30 minutes from each other. So we can't take these threats lightly because we know what's going on. We know how they got hung, right? We ain't got to think about it. It's the same thing they was doing way back when. They doing it now.
It is my job to pay attention to these things, and I have. There's also been an uptick in rhetoric online, threats from these different militia groups. And again, this is not a training exercise. This is real. The threat is real this weekend. Take precautions. When you're out and about with your families, you should avoid large crowds of people, which shouldn't be hard because we're still on coronavirus protocol. So staying away from large crowds should be easy. Most of the fireworks events and so forth, I believe, have been canceled. If not, you may want to consider staying away from those things. And I know, like myself, we're not celebrating the 4th of July, but I know people and their children like to see fireworks and may want to go out anyway. I would advise you not to do it. While you're out, be on the lookout for anyone that looks suspicious. Yeah, a white person wearing a coat or anything that doesn't look appropriate for the weather, because they might be carrying a firearm up under that jacket or whatever. Also, any packages or anything like that might be sitting around with no one attending it. Just like they announce in the airports, if you see a package, no one around it, get away from it. Avoid being near trash cans, trash bins, things like that, because these white nationalists and white supremacists have been known to put bombs inside those things with nails in them and things like that. So the bottom line is, protect your family at all times. Be on the lookout. We all should be on a heightened state of awareness anyway with everything that's going on around the country right now. But this weekend, you need to be on an extra high state of alert. This threat is real. This is not some conspiracy theory or anything like that. This information comes from credible sources down through the Huey P. Newton Gun Club. And it is important that you take whatever steps you deem necessary to protect yourselves and your families. If you have any questions.
So y'all see what he said, right? So who got to be on alert? Because whose Independence Day are they celebrating? And what did they do for their independence? They fought for it, right? They fought their own brothers and killed their own brothers because they didn't want to be under rule of them anymore. So what you think they going to do to us? We ain't nothing to them already. So they'll try to eliminate us real quick, real easy. They already got the people on their side. So let's get this next scripture. Because this is what we're here to do, bring the warning to our people. Whether they want to hear it or not, they got to hear it.
Ezekiel chapter 33 and verse 2, Son of man, speak to the children of thy people and
See,
say,
there you go. He keep iterating that again. Speak to the children of your people. Let them know what's going on. Don't keep them in the dark, but go ahead.
and say unto them, when I bring the sword upon a land, if the people of the land take a man of their coasts and set him for their watchman, if when he seeth the sword come upon the land, he blow the trumpet and warn the people.
So that trumpet is our mouths. Isaiah 58:1, cry aloud, spare not. So we ain't sparing nothing. We're going to tell you what thus saith the Lord, and we're going to tell you what's going on right now. Because you got a lot of pastors, they ain't saying nothing. But the church is a big community of our people, right? But they not giving our people no warnings. So what does that happen? What happens to our people? They get killed. And they shouldn't have been killed. Because they could have got that warning. But you got people that will teach this Bible and would say it's for everybody instead of teaching to who it's supposed to be taught to and warn the people that's being killed. But go ahead.
Then whosoever heareth the sound of the trumpet and taketh not warning, if the sword come and take him away, his blood shall be upon his own head.
So this is how we get the blood off our hands. By teaching what thus said the Lord. But by teaching what's going on in this wicked world, in this wicked country. Go ahead.
He heard the sound of the trumpet and took not warning. His blood shall be upon him. But he that taketh warning shall deliver his soul. But if the watchman see the sword come and blow not the trumpet, and the people be not warned, if the sword come and take any person from among them, he is taken away in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at the watchman's hand.
So we got a lot of people that saying, oh man, ain't nothing gonna happen. It's all good. Love everybody. You even got Israelites that teach that too. Not just the bootleg church. You got Jakes that would teach that. Everybody going to the kingdom. God love everybody. You ain't got no enemies. But we got to warn the people. But go ahead. Oh, that's all of that. So we're going to get this next slide. We're going to get into this, why we shouldn't celebrate the 4th of July. Because this was a real notable man right here. We're going to find out who he was. We're going to find out who this man. It says, what to the slave is the 4th of July? Frederick Douglass. He letting you know we slaves. We're going to find out what happened to him as a young slave. But go ahead, read this. And this is an abridged version, because I'm going to go into another version that they don't like to show us what he wrote in his speech. But go ahead.
What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim.
He said the gross injustice, a constant victim. Aren't we still victimized by the same thing? George Floyd just got killed, right? It seems like since Trayvon Martin got killed, brothers have been getting killed left and right, off left and right, right? And then how many people we had get hung last month?
Few of them.
It was 6 people that got hung within a month. We ain't committing suicide like that. What's that? Go ahead.
To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty, an unholy license, your national greatness, swelling vanity. Your sound of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciation of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence. Your shout of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of the United States at this very hour.
He let it be known. He didn't hold no punches. But we're going to get into this right quick, because, man.
He's a father blesser.
Yep. So this is page 5 of his book, Frederick Douglass. This is his letter, the Frederick Douglass speech. Can you read that? Can you see it? Yeah, read it from here, right?
His words right there, I got it.
All right, go ahead.
Starting at the top. So that the character and conduct of this nation never looked blacker to me than on this 4th of July. Whether we turn to the declarations of the past or the professions of the present, the conduct of the nation seems equally hideous and revolting. America is false to the past, false to the present, and solemnly binds herself to be false to the future.
If anybody ever went in, y'all need to go get this letter and read it. But this dude went in. He was prolific in his speech, all that. He was sound in his judgment. He didn't hold no punches. He didn't get up there and do the Jesse Jackson shuffle, but he went up there and told the truth. But go ahead.
Standing with God and the crushed and bleeding slave on this occasion, I will, in the name of humanity which is outraged, in the name of liberty which is fettered, in the name of the Constitution and the Bible, which are disregarded and trampled upon, dare to call in question and to denounce with all the emphasis I can command everything that serves to be disregarded and trampled upon, perpetuate slavery, the great sin and shame of America. I will not equivocate. I will not excuse. I will use the severest language I can command, and yet not one word shall escape with me that any man whose judgment is not blinded by prejudice or who is not at heart a slaveholder shall not confess to be right and just. But I fancy I hear someone of my audience say, it is just in this circumstance that you and your brother, abolitionists, fail to make a favorable impression on the public mind. Would you argue more and denounce less? Would you persuade more and rebuke less? your cause would be much more likely to succeed. But I submit, where all is plain, there is nothing to be argued. What point in the anti-slavery creed would you have me to argue? On what branch of the subject do the people of this country need light? Must I undertake to prove that the slave is a man? That point is conceded already. Nobody doubts it. The slaveholders themselves acknowledge it in the enactment of their laws for their government. They acknowledge it when they punish disobedience on the part of the slave. There are 72 crimes in the state of Virginia which, if committed by a black man, no matter how ignorant he be, subject him to the punishment of death.
Don't we get that today? That double standard? White man shoot and kill somebody, he gets 6 months. Black man shoot and kill somebody, he get life in prison. But go ahead.
While only 2 of the same crimes will subject a white man to the like punishment. What is this but the acknowledgement that the slave is a moral, intellectual, and responsible being? The manhood of the slave is conceded. It is admitted in the fact that Southern statute books are covered with enactments forbidding, under severe fines and penalties, the teaching of the slave to read or to write. When you can point to any such laws in reference to the beasts of under severe fines, of the field, then I may consent to argue the manhood of the slave. For the present, it is to affirm the equal manhood of the Negro race. It is not astonishing that while we are plowing, planting, and reaping, using all kinds of mechanical tools, erecting houses, constructing bridges, building ships, working in metals of brass, iron, copper, silver, and gold, that while we are reading, writing, and ciphering, acting as clerks, merchants, and secretaries, having amongst us lawyers, doctors, ministers, poets, authors, editors, orators, and teachers, that while we are engaged in all manner of enterprises common to other men, digging gold in California, capturing the whale in the Pacific, feeding sheep and cattle on the hillside, living, moving, acting, thinking, planning, living in families as husbands, wives, and children, and above all, confessing and worshiping the Christian's God, and looking hopefully for life and immortality beyond the grave, we are called upon to prove that we are men. Would you have me argue that man is entitled to liberty, that he is the rightful owner of his own body? You have already declared it. Must I argue the wrongfulness of slavery? Is that a question for Republicans? Is it to be settled by the rules of logic and argumentation?
So let's go to Deuteronomy 28 and 48 right quick. Because this is something that the Most High said he would do to us, right? You could put the camera on us right quick.
Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 48. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee.
So we are serving our enemies. Everything Frederick Douglass mentioned in his speech, but go ahead.
In hunger and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee.
So we've been destroyed, and we still fighting for the same thing over and over and over. That's insanity. But let's go back to the Frederick Douglass PowerPoint right quick.
Make a point real quick.
Yeah, you can make a point out.
Crazy part about it, he said that we'll serve our enemies in hunger and in thirst. That's something I always thought about, like working a job. They give you an allotted time for break, for lunch. They tell you when you can go eat. They tell you when you can go drink. They tell you when you have the opportunity to relieve yourself. All this has to be done on your personal time. But you still serve your enemies in want and in hunger. Because you sit at that desk or you sit wherever it is or stand or work or whatever the case may be, you still got to get permission. Can't just walk off. We're still in that same captivity without the balls and chains. But he said he'll only hold us in that yoke of iron until he has destroyed us. Because now, how many of our people are trying to escape? How many of our people are running off the job saying, I'll never go back. I just want to be free. I'm about to. Ain't nobody saying that. Everybody's like, man, I can get some overtime. Get that OT, man. You know they got that OT. Man, they paying like $4, $5 more an hour. Our people are satisfied here in America, in captivity.
So read page 6.
Man, I'll tell you, bro.
Yeah, you got 2 more pages and we good.
2? As a matter beset with great difficulty, involving a doubtful application of the principle of justice, hard to be understood, there is not a man beneath the canopy of heaven that does not know that slavery is wrong for him. What? Am I to argue that it is wrong to make men brutes, to rob them of their liberty, to work with them without wages, to keep them ignorant of their relations to their fellow men, to beat them with sticks?
Didn't our forefathers come over here? Taking on cargo slave ships, working without wages for a long time. But go ahead.
To flay their flesh with the lash, to load their limbs with irons, to hunt them with dogs, to sell them at auction, to sunder their families, to knock out their teeth.
Hold up. He said hunt them like dogs. Didn't they have the slave catchers who are now the police?
I said with dogs. Even worse, because then you got
Still doing the same thing. Ain't nothing changed. They still got the same badge, same symbol. But go ahead.
To knock out their teeth, to burn their flesh, to starve them into obedience and submission to their masters.
Didn't they do this? They take the strongest man, the strongest, they wouldn't even call him man, they call him a buck. They would refer to us as animals, right? Tie him to a horse and pull him apart. Yeah, breed him or rape him in front of all the women. Emasculate him, take all his power away from him. Ain't nothing changed. Still fighting for the same thing, but 4th of July is good, right? Nah, it ain't. But go ahead.
Must I argue that a system thus marked with blood and stained with pollution is wrong? No, I will not. I have better employment.
So, hold that right there. Let's get a scripture right quick. Let's get Habakkuk 2:12. You can put the camera on us right quick. All right? Habakkuk chapter 2.
2 and 12.
Yeah.
Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 12. Woe to him that buildeth a town with blood.
So the Most High is telling you destruction is coming to these people. They ain't get away, but go ahead.
And establisheth a city by iniquity.
So that's how America was established, by iniquity. By bloodshed of Native Americans, African Americans, Latinos. But go ahead.
Behold, is it not of the Lord of hosts that
That's
the
it.
people...
That's all I needed. That's all I needed. Let's go back to the PowerPoint.
I have better employments for my time and strength than such arguments would imply. What then remains to be argued? Is it that slavery is not divine, that God did not establish it, that our doctors of divinity are mistaken? There is blasphemy in the thought. That which is inhuman cannot be divine. Who can reason on such a proposition? They that can may, I cannot. The time for such argument is past. At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed. Oh, had I the ability and could I reach the nation's ear, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be roused. The property of the nation must be startled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed, and its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced. What to the American slave is the 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty, an unholy license, your national greatness, swelling vanity, your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. your denunciations of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence, your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery.
And that's what we read in the beginning. So
Okay.
I told you they abridged it, but go ahead.
Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him more bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. Go where you may, search where you will, roam through all the monarchies and despotisms of the old world, travel through South America, search out every abuse, and when you have found the last, lay your facts by the side of the everyday practices of this nation, and you will say with me that for revolting barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, America reigns without a rival. Internal slave trade.
Man, internal slave trade. We suffering, y'all. Before we get that, let's go here and let's go to Psalms 94, verse 20. Because this is what they do, as he mentioned in the letter.
Psalms chapter 94 and verse 20. Shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee?
See, that's the throne of iniquity. The Most High asks them, shall they have fellowship with us? No, they shouldn't.
Which frameth mischief by a law.
It was okay to kill people as long as they were slaves, right? It was okay to go to another country and get people to work for you for free, right? So I'm going to ask, as Frederick Douglass asks, what to the slave is the 4th of July? It ain't nothing, man. Hurt, pain, anguish, slavery, right? So let's go back to the PowerPoint. Psalms 94. This one is bigger.
Okay.
Hold on, 7, right there. 7.
I noticed they're mirroring each other. I tried to make it big, but messed up the PowerPoint. Take the American slave trade, which we are told by the papers is especially prosperous just now. Ex-Senator Benton tells us that the price of men was never higher than now. He mentions the fact to show that slavery is in no danger. This trade is one of the peculiarities of American institutions.
So he was saying that slavery is not in danger. The price of a man was higher once they won their independence. Y'all see that? So while we celebrating the 4th of July, the price of us went up when they gained their independence. It had nothing to do with us. But go ahead.
It is carried on in all the large towns and cities in one half of this Confederacy, and millions are pocketed every year by dealers in this horrific traffic. In several states, this trade is a chief source of wealth.
He said this was their #1 source of wealth, the chief source of wealth. Selling African Americans, selling Native Americans. So how are we going to bridge this wealth gap? People always asking, right? Go ahead.
It has been denounced with burning words from the high places of the nation as an execrable traffic. To arrest it, to put an end to it. This nation keeps a squadron at immense cost on the coast of Africa.
So they still have people in Africa bringing slaves over here, right? Go ahead.
Everywhere in this country, it is safe to speak of this foreign slave trade as a most inhuman traffic, opposed alike to the laws of God and of man. The duty to extirpate and destroy it is admitted even by our doctors of divinity. In order to put an end to it, some of these last have consented that their colored brethren nominally free, should leave this country and establish themselves on the western coast of Africa. Go back to Africa.
Yep. Which they did that in 1985. They allowed some of our people to go back and establish a town which is called Sierra Leone. But go ahead.
It is, however, a notable fact that while so much execration is poured out by Americans upon who's engaged in this foreign slave trade, the men engaged in the slave trade between the states pass without condemnation, and their business is deemed honorable. Behold, the practical operation of this internal slave trade, the American slave trade, sustained by American politics and American religion. Here you will see men and women reared like swine for the market.
So that's talking about us. Y'all seen the pictures, the images? Brothers shackled up, no clothes on, butt to butt. Yeah. You can also watch the documentary Goodbye Uncle Tom. The Good Slave. Man, they got a lot of them on YouTube. That's telling our story. But go ahead.
You know what is a swine drover? I will show you a man drover. They inhabit all our southern states. They perambulate the country and crowd the highways of the nation, which droves of human stock. You will see one of these human flesh jobbers armed with pistol, whip, and bowie knife, driving a company of 100 men, women, and children from the Pontomac to the slave market at New Orleans.
Show me a white man that been through this that can tell you he's a real Jew. But it's recorded in our history, even our forefather, Frederick Douglass, who was a Native American. He wrote this. But go ahead.
These wretched people are to be sold singly, or in lots to suit purchasers. They are food for the cotton field and the deadly sugar mill.
So that's where our people work. Cotton fields, sugar mills, all that, right? The cane fields, but go ahead.
Mark the sad procession as it moves warily along, and the inhuman wretch who drives them. Hear his savage yells and his blood-chilling oaths as he hurries on his affrighted captives. There see the old man with locks thinned and gray. Cast one glance, if you please, upon the young mother, whose shoulders are bare to the scorching sun, her briny tears falling on the brow of the babe in her arms. See, too, that girl of 13, weeping, yes, weeping, as she thinks of the mother from whom she has been torn.
So they was taking children, right? Didn't the scripture say we not going to be able to enjoy our young? Esau was taking our children. We're going to find out that Frederick Douglass was also taken from his mother as a babe, raised as a slave. But later on he escaped. But go ahead.
The drove moves tardily. Heat and sorrow have nearly consumed their strength. Suddenly you hear a quick snap like the discharge of a rifle. The fetters clank and the chain rattles simultaneously. Your ears are saluted with a scream that seems to have torn its way to the center of your soul. The crack you heard was the sound of a slave whip. The scream you heard was from the woman you saw with the babe.
That's where they get the word cracker from. That cracker be cracking that whip. But go ahead.
Her speed had faltered under the weight of her child and her chains. That gash on her shoulder tells her to move on. Follow the drove to New Orleans.
Let's get the scripture right quick. Hold that. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28. I want 49 and verse 50. You can put the camera on us right quick.
Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 49. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far,
which is Esau. Go ahead.
from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth. A nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. A nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old.
So they don't regard the person of the old, but go ahead.
Nor show favor to the young.
This little girl was 13 years old, and they whipping her, breaking her skin open with a whip. Man, terrible, right? But this is the things we suffer from, and these are the things when we not taught correctly, our people go out and celebrate their own destruction. 4th of July, let's pop fireworks, have food, and have family over, but don't even know why. This should be a day of mourning for us.
God.
So let's go back to the PowerPoint.
Follow the drove to New Orleans. Attend the auction. See men examined like horses. See the forms of women rudely and brutally exposed to the shocking gaze of American slave buyers. See this drove sold and separated forever. And never forget the deep, sad sobs that arose from that scattered multitude.
That's crazy. Let's get this next one. I'm not sure. I don't know where it was. But I can find out for you. Okay. So go ahead and read that.
Tell me, citizens, where under the sun you can witness a spectacle more fiendish and shocking. Yet this is but a glance at the American slave trade, as it exists at this moment in the ruling part of the United States. I was born amidst such sights and scenes. To me, the American slave trade is a terrible reality. When a child, my soul was often pierced with the sense of its horrors. I lived in Philpott Street, Fells Point, Baltimore, and have watched from the wharves the slave ships in the basin, anchored from the shore with their cargoes of human flesh.
So let's get this, Deuteronomy 28:68. Because everything he wrote about is in the scriptures.
Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships.
Which we know the transatlantic slave trade started in the 1600s, right? And it's recorded throughout history who our slave owners was and who they are today. Right? Go ahead.
By the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies.
To our friends?
To your enemies.
To our friends so we can celebrate 4th of July with them?
There ye shall be sold unto your enemies.
The scripture said we were sold to our enemies, and they continue to show us to this very day that they are our enemies. Through the murder and the rape and the robbing and the pillaging and killing of our people, and not returning everything that their forefathers stole, right? Because you know America has a law. You get caught with something stolen, even though you didn't steal it, you're an accessory to crime. So isn't America accessory to all the crimes committed by their forefathers? Guilty, right? Yeah, so let's go back to the PowerPoint. No, that was it.
With their cargoes of human flesh, waiting for favorable winds to waft them down the Chesapeake. There was, at that time, a grand slave mart kept at the head of Pratt Street by Austin Woldfolk. His agents were sent into every town and county in Maryland, announcing their arrival through the papers and on flaming handbills, headed cash for Negroes. These men were generally well-dressed men and very captivating in their manners, ever ready to drink, to treat, and to gamble. The fate of many a slave has depended upon the turn of a single card, and many a child has been snatched from the arms of its mother by bargains arranged in a state of brutal drunkenness. The fleshmongers gather up their victims by dozens and drive them chained to the general depot at Baltimore. When a sufficient number have been collected here, a ship is chartered for the purpose of conveying the forlorn crew to Mobile or to New Orleans. From the slave prison to the ship, they are usually driven in the darkness of night, for since the anti-slavery agitation, a certain caution is observed. In the deep still darkness of midnight, I have been often aroused by the dead heavy footsteps and the piteous cries of the chain gangs that passed our door. The anguish of my boyish heart was intense, and I was often consoled when speaking to my mistress in the morning.
So mind you, he was a little boy going through all of this. He was a child. But go ahead.
To hear her say that the custom was very wicked, that she hated to hear the rattle of the chains and the heart-rending cries. I was glad to find one who sympathized with me in my horror. Fellow citizens, this murderous traffic is today an active operation in this boasted republic. In the solitude of my spirit, I see clouds of dust raised on the highways of the South. I see the bleeding footsteps. I hear the doleful wail of fettered humanity on the way to the slave markets where the victims are to be sold like horses, sheep, and swine, knocked off to the highest bidder. There I see the tenderest ties ruthlessly broken to gratify the lust, caprice, and rapacity of the buyers and sellers of men. My soul sickens at the sight. Is this the land your fathers loved? The freedom which they toiled to win? Is this the earth wherein they moved? Are these the graves they slumber in? But a still more inhuman, disgraceful, and scandalous state of things remains to be presented. By an act of the American Congress, not yet 2 years old, slavery has been nationalized.
So he's telling you that the American Congress, the ones who make law, they sanction this. Let's go. This is the last page right here. Huh?
Slavery has been, all praises,
Nationalized.
nationalized in its most horrific and revolting form. By that act, Mason and Dixon's line has been obliterated. New York has become as Virginia, and the power to hold, hunt, and sell men, women, and children as slaves remains no longer a mere stateside institution, but is now an institution of the whole United States.
Wow. Remember I talked about the slave hunters? They were going to hunt us down if we tried to escape. Why? Because they were getting free labor. Making money off us. Breeding us, as you said earlier. Right? But go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Crazy part about it, we always see like the movies and hear about the North and how that was the savior of the so-called Negroes and how it was just all gonna get better. Said it was through the whole United States.
Oh, I'm gonna show that too.
There was nowhere safe.
It was nowhere safe. Go ahead.
The power is coextensive with the Star-Spangled Banner and American Christianity. Where these go may also go the merciless slave hunter. Where these are, man is not sacred. He is a bird for the sportsman's gun. By that most foul and fiendish of all human decrees, the liberty and person of every man are put in peril. Your broad Republican domain is hunting ground for men, not for thieves and robbers, enemies of society merely, but for men guilty of no crime. Your lawmakers have commanded all good citizens to engage in this hellish sport. Your president, your secretary of state, your lords, nobles, and ecclesiastics enforce as a duty you owe to your free and glorious country and to your God that ye do this accursed thing. Not fewer than 40 Americans have within the past 2 years been hunted down and without a moment's warning hurried away in chains and co-signed to slavery and excruciating torture.
So even if the ones that were free, they were still taken and put back in chains. So if they escaped slavery, they were put back into slavery. But go ahead.
Some of these have had wives and children dependent on them for bread, but of this no account was made. The right of the hunter to his prey stands superior to the right of marriage and to all rights in this republic, the rights of God included. For black men, there are neither law, justice, humanity, not religion. The fugitive slave law makes mercy to them a crime and bribes the judge who tries them. An American judge gets $10 for every victim he co-signs to slavery.
So they was taking bribes. If you was a free man, they was taking bribes. $10 to put this man in slavery. Somebody can own you now. But go ahead.
And 5, when he fails to do so. The oath of any 2 villains is sufficient under this hell-backed enactment to send the most pious and exemplary black men into the remorseless jaws of slavery. His own testimony is nothing. He can bring no witnesses for himself. The minister of American justice is bound by the law to hear but one side, and that side is the side of the oppressor.
Don't they do that today? Yes, absolutely. They only show one side of everything. But go ahead.
Let this damning fact be perpetually told. Let it be thundered around the world that in tyrant-killing, king-hating, people-loving, democratic Christian America, the seats of justice are filled with judges who hold their offices under an open and palpable bribe and are bound in deciding in the case of a man's liberty, hear only his accusers. In glaring violation of justice and shameless disregard of the forms of administering law, in cunning arrangement to entrap the defenseless, and in diabolical intent.
So hold that right there. Let's get Zechariah 11:5 right quick. He said they only hear the accusers, which the accusers is Esau in this instance. It's not our people.
11:5.
Yep.
Zechariah chapter 11, verse 5. Whose oppressors slay them and hold themselves not guilty.
Ain't that what he's saying they did? This mirrors, his story mirrors exactly what the Bible says they would do and how they would be. But this is America. Our people still want to celebrate 4th of July. Out of ignorance? Yeah. But go ahead, finish reading that.
Whose oppressors slay them and hold themselves not guilty, and they that sell them say, Blessed be the Lord, for I am rich, and their own shepherds pity them not.
Man, the Bible's on point when it tells us how Esau gonna be. Didn't he say they say we do this in the name of our God? Yeah. Under their Christianity? But go ahead, finish reading that.
This fugitive slave law stands alone in the annals of tyrannical legislation. I doubt if there be another nation on the globe having the brass and the baseness to put such a law on the statute book. If any man in this assembly thinks differently from me in this matter and feels able to disprove my statements, I will gladly confront him at any suitable time and place he may select. Religious liberty. I take this law to be one of the grossest infringements of Christian liberty, and if the churches and ministers of our country were not stupidly blind or most wickedly indifferent, they too would so regard it. At the very moment that they are thanking God for the enjoyment of civil and religious liberty and for the right to worship God according to the dictates of their own.
Which we know they don't worship the Most High. They don't praise the Most High or nothing. All right? So let's get this. Because this was a lot of our people do ignorantly. Isaiah 5:20. Go ahead.
Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light.
See, this is a dark situation that our people are in. But our people are celebrating and saying, oh, it's just 4th of July, it's harmless. Go ahead.
And light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet.
Ain't this a bitter moment in history for us? Go ahead.
And sweet for bitter.
Man. So this is my question now. This is my question, y'all. Go ahead, read that out loud.
What if enslaved black people revolted and had a revolution on July 4th, 1776, against America for their enslavement? Would they have been considered patriots in the fight for their freedom and independence?
Hey, what y'all gonna do? Y'all gonna fight for y'all own freedom and independence? Your own country? Your own laws? Your own rights? Are y'all gonna fight for the right to live? Fight for the right of righteousness, not to be enslaved. Because y'all know what 1776 was about, right? 4th of July, right? What was it about? America's independence from Great Britain. Absolutely. We're going to find out what caused that. Why did they want independence? Because I mentioned taxes earlier. Oh, man.
Taxation without representation.
Yep. Read that.
Do you know why they celebrate July 4th? The American Revolution was an ideological and political revolution which occurred in colonial North America between 1765 and 1783. The American patriots in the 13 colonies defeated the British in the American Revolutionary War, 1775 through 1783, with the assistance of France, winning independence from Great Britain and establishing the United States of America.
So they broke away from their own brothers and their own sisters, and they fought them because they didn't want them to rule over them. Go ahead, read that.
The American colonials proclaimed no taxation without representation.
He said no taxation without representation. They was fighting because they didn't have nobody to represent them in the United Nations. Do we have somebody to represent us today at the United Nations?
Nope.
Do we have somebody to represent us
Nope.
when we getting taxed? This what the war was about. Like, y'all ain't gonna rule over us and take our money without no representation. We getting killed without representation. We paying tax without representation. Right? We get our rights taken away from us without representation. But we celebrating the 4th of July like we did something. Come on now, finish reading that.
The American colonials proclaimed no taxation without representation. Starting with the Stamp Act Congress in 1765, they had no representatives in the British Parliament and so rejected Parliament's authority to tax them.
So they was like, we don't have no representative there, so y'all not gonna take our money. We would say that's something real simple, right? But don't the scripture say if you don't work, you don't eat? So they like, if we over here working, because that's the same thing they did to us. They went and got us and brought us over here on cargo slave ships. We working for them for free. And they fighting for what we want. Rights to govern ourselves. Rights not to pay somebody else tribute. Fight their own people, yeah. And now they celebrate it year after year after year after year. But see, they don't teach us all this in school. But go ahead.
Protests steadily escalated to the Boston Massacre in 1770 and the burning of the Gaspee in Rhode Island in 1772.
But remember I said, how did I say white folks protest? They go out with guns and swords and knives. They're not going to go out there and picket.
Dancing.
They're not going to go dance and twerking in front of the police. Yeah, but go ahead.
Followed by the Boston Tea Party in December 1773. The British responded by closing Boston Harbor and enacting a series of punitive laws which effectively rescinded Massachusetts Bay Colony's rights to self-government. The other colonies rallied behind Massachusetts, and a group of American patriot leaders set up their own government in late 1774 at the Continental Congress to coordinate their resistance of Britain.
Ain't that something we need, our own government? To govern our own people? To go to war when we need to go to war? Right?
Absolutely.
But this is what they fought for. Go ahead.
Other colonists retained their allegiance to the crown and were known as loyalists or Tories. Tensions erupted into battle between Patriot militia and British regulars when King George's forces attempted to destroy American military supplies at the Lexington and Concord on April 19, 1775.
And the loyalists, they fought alongside Britain. That's why they called them loyalists, because they in America, but they're fighting against the American people. But go ahead.
The conflict quickly escalated into war, during which the Patriots and later their French allies fought the British and Loyalists in the Revolutionary War. Each colony formed a provincial Congress, which assumed power from the former colonial governments, suppressed loyalism, and recruited a Continental Army led by General George Washington. The Continental Congress declared King George a tyrant who trampled the colonists' right as Englishmen, and they declared the colonies free and independent states on July 2, 1776. The Patriot leadership professed the political philosophies of liberalism and republicanism to reject monarchy and aristocracy.
So
And
they didn't want one ruler over them. That's what monarchy is. But go ahead.
And they proclaimed that all men are created equal.
Don't it say that in the Constitution? All men are created equal? So you know they wasn't talking about us, right? We were still slaves at this time. So when you see or you hear them talk about all men are created equal, they not talking about you.
Independence Day, colloquially,
What that say at the top though, huh?
they fought for their freedom.
Go ahead.
Independence Day, colloquially the 4th of July or July 4th, is a federal holiday in the United States commemorating the Declaration of Independence of the United States. On July 4th, 1776, the Continental Congress declared that the 13 American colonies were no longer subject and subordinate to the monarch of Britain, King George III, and were now united, free, and independent states.
So they fought for their freedom. How y'all think we gonna get free? They brought us over here on cargo slave ships to be servants. They still serving us as chattel slavery. We can go in and out and about, but we still slaves. You got a birth certificate, you got a social security card. You can't travel about the country as you want to, around the world. You got to have a passport which say, I have permission to travel. You got to have an ID which say, I have permission to drive in these streets. Because what do they ask for? And if you don't submit it to them, what do the police do? They kill you or take you to jail. Philando Castillo, he had all the right permits. He was even a teacher, and he still got killed in his car. Now, let's see what their president said.
John Adams had written to his wife Abigail, the 2nd day of July, 1776, will be the most memorable epoch in the history of America.
Isn't it? Celebrated year after year after year. And to them, it get better and better and better. The fireworks get better and better and better, right? Go ahead.
I am apt to believe that it will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival. It ought to be commemorated as the day of deliverance by solemn acts of devotion to God Almighty.
Who's they God? Satan. They don't serve the Most High, right? Let's go to Joel 2 and 27. Joel chapter 2, verse 27.
1 second.
My head shiny.
It's a little bitty Bible.
You want mine?
Nah, I got it. Joel 2 and 27. And ye shall know that I am in the midst of Israel.
So the Most High is in the midst of Esau?
In the midst of Israel.
The Arabs.
In the midst of Israel.
He's in the midst of the so-called African Americans, Latinos, and Native Americans. And let's see what it say, God.
And that I am the Lord your God.
Their
and,
God?
your God,
He's our power. And none else, right?
and none else.
And none else. Let's go back to the PowerPoint, please. So this is what you have to do as the children of Israel. So go ahead and read that. Because this is what our forefathers did.
First Maccabees chapter 3 and verse 2. And all his brethren helped him, and so did all they that held with his father. And they fought with cheerfulness the battle of Israel.
See, we have to fight with cheerfulness the battle of Israel. Fighting for our nation, fighting for our rights. Right? But go ahead.
So he gat his people great honor, and put on a breastplate as a giant, and girt his warlike harness about him. And he made battles, protecting the host with his sword. In his axe he was like a lion, and like a lion's whelp roaring for his prey. Verse 17, who, when they saw the host coming to meet them, said unto Judas, how shall we be able, being so few, to fight against so great a multitude and so strong?
So our forefathers was fighting against Esau. And they was like, it's only a few of us. How are we going to fight in the battle against them? But this is what he said. Go ahead.
Seeing we are ready to faint with fasting all this day. Unto whom Judas answered, it is no hard matter for many to be shut up in the hands of a few.
So we're going to show y'all that. Let's get Leviticus 26 in verse 7. But come back, we're gonna come back to that.
Leviticus chapter 26 and verse 7, and ye shall chase your enemies, and they shall fall before you by the sword. And 5 of you shall chase 100.
So how many going to do it?
And 5 of you shall chase 100.
That's only a few of y'all. 5 of us in here right now can go chase 100 of our enemies, being that the Most High is with us. That's the few he's talking about, but go ahead.
And 100 of you shall put 10,000 to flight.
Wait, hold up. 100 of us?
And 100 of you shall put 10,000 to flight.
That's like 1%. Putting 10,000 men to flight when we come back to our righteousness. Right? So you can finish reading that.
And your enemies shall fall before you by the sword.
So Israel had enemies, which we have today. But let's finish reading the PowerPoint.
First Maccabees 3 and 18. Unto whom Judas answered, it is no hard matter for many to be shut up in the hands of a few. And with the God of heaven it is all one, to deliver with a great multitude or a small company.
So the Most High, he's our power, right? We just read that in Joel 2 and 27, but go ahead.
For the victory of battle standeth not in the multitude of an host, but strength cometh from heaven. They come against us in much pride and iniquity to destroy us, and our wives and children, and to spoil us. But we fight for our lives and our laws.
That's what we're supposed to be fighting for. Our lives and our laws, right? Because as he mentioned earlier, talking about the North and the South, they was far apart. But what does that say? Read that.
What does the Confederate flag represent today? The Confederate flag was designed to represent a divided nation.
So this is the divided nation, America against this Great Britain, right? So you still have some people, even though they lost the war, they still put up the Confederate flag. Black people be like, oh, this is our flag, we fought for this. But we're going to show you. But go ahead.
It was flown during the Civil War when 11 states, Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, North and South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and Texas, broke from the nation to defend the practice of slavery.
Who's they slaves? Who was they slaves? We were. That's why they put up their own flag, because they wanted to continue to fight to keep us in slavery. So y'all say any sellouts flying the Confederate flag, know that that's a coon right there. Oh, it's for this, it's for that. Nah, this right here is what it's for. They want to continue in racism. But go ahead.
The Confederate Army lost that war more than 150 years ago, But the battle flag still represents a deep and bitter divide across America today.
So should we be celebrating 4th of July?
Nope.
HEE hockey sticks, no. I'm going to go to the next slide. Look. Read that. I know you can see that.
Americans, on the left, Americans who live in rural areas are more likely to say the Confederate flag represents heritage over racism.
So what is your heritage? Heritage is something that you inherit, right? So they inherit racism. Yeah, the slaves as well. What they call that when they use different words?
What you mean?
Because they said inherited racism, inherited the flag. But I think of it. Now read the one on the right.
Fallacies?
No, not a fallacy.
Okay. What does the Confederate flag represent? It might vary depending on if you're college educated and white.
So now we're going to see what the college people think. They think like Trump. Exactly. You see 73%. They know that it's racist in different states. They know that it's racist. Man, I should have highlighted that because you can't even see it. But we're going to go to the next slide because they know what it is.
They know. Which divisions of the United States believe the Confederate flag represents racism and which believes it represents heritage?
But it's the same thing. Because of your forefathers of Esau, who enslaved us, and this is your heritage, what did you inherit? Racism. No matter what. Because some say, oh, I'm fighting for my heritage. Well, you fighting for your heritage because your people was wicked. They was Esau. Yeah, go ahead, get the mic.
When Trump was running for president, and he was saying "Make America Great Again," he was talking about racism.
Yeah.
He was talking about white supremacy.
Correct,
And
absolutely.
our people just played right past that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that started way back when. Let's go to First Maccabees right quick. First Maccabees chapter 1. Because ain't nothing new under the sun. First Maccabees chapter 1, verse 41.
First Maccabees chapter 1, verse 41. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people.
So you can get Ecclesiastes 4 and 16. It shows you that the people are still here today. This is King Antiochus, one of the Edomites, right? But go ahead.
And everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king.
So of course his people are going to agree, but what about our people?
Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion.
So a lot of our people do this today. They call it the Divine Nine, the Greek rule, right? You got sororities, fraternities, you got deltas, you got AKAs, you got Omega Psi Phis, right? But our people, they consented to the Greeks' religion. Ain't nothing new under the sun. Everything's still happening today. Because you know them brothers have one of the biggest and one of the strongest organizations. Where you see them at in the fight for righteousness? And they all in college, right? Prestige men and women, knowledgeable, right? But they not fighting for what we fighting for. So a lot of our Israelite brothers and sisters, they consented to their religion. Leaving off their laws, leaving off their covenant with the Most High. Yeah, go ahead.
Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbath.
So they profaned the Sabbath. Go to verse 49.
Verse 49, to the end they might forget the law, and change all the ordinances.
So that's what it's all about. Us forgetting our laws and changing all of our ordinance, and following after Esau. So let's go back to the PowerPoint. So when you see this, know that that's your enemy's flag. It ain't got nothing to do with us. Black people celebrate 4th of July like they were free. History determined that was a lie. No, they don't. Neither one of them. Look at all these brothers that was hung on 4th of July. 4th of July, 1865. And you know that was back when? Right after Frederick Douglass wrote his speech. 4th of July, 1945. 4th of July, 1965. 4th of July, 2005. And what they say they're going to do tomorrow to our people. Yeah, it's going to be some bloodshed, right? So what do we have to be in alert for? Mindful, yeah, on alert. Because the same people that killed us back then are plotting to kill us again. But these were the freedom fighters. Because y'all know the World War I Civil War, right? We returned fighting. Let's see why they fought, though. Go ahead.
Approximately 180,000 African American soldiers took up the call to fight for the Union, comprising more than 10% of all federal forces. Knowing that a northern loss could mean possible re-enslavement, free men and former slaves showed dedication to their country and a commitment to the freedom of their people forever.
So that Confederate flag representing them wanting to put us back into slavery. This is the reason why they fought. They didn't have no choice or go back into slavery. The president of National Rifle Association said, I can't wait to put us back in slavery. So what y'all gonna do? Y'all gonna celebrate 4th of July? Create your own independence? Come on now. Go ahead, finish reading that.
Who would be free themselves must strike the blow.
So he said, if you free, you got to strike the blow. You can't depend on the ones that's not free to fight. If you free, you got to help fight in this war. Or you go back into slavery like everybody else. But go ahead.
Better even to die free than to live slaves.
So some of us, we got to muster that up. Some of us going to have to die. So our race can live on. So our children can live on. So they can live a better life, right? But go ahead.
Black regiments, commanded by white officers and designated U.S. colored troops, USCT, were quickly raised by the War Department following the announcement of the Emancipation Proclamation in early 1863. Often used as assault troops, USCT saw action in more than 400 engagements.
They was fighting. They was fighting. They was putting in work for us so we don't go back into slavery.
39 of which were major battles, including Port Hudson, Louisiana, Fort Wagner, South Carolina, the Siege of Petersburg, Virginia, and Nashville, Tennessee. More than 9,000 black seamen in the U.S. Navy added to the Union's strength, as did thousands of others who served in military support positions. Disease and combat wounds claimed almost 38,000 casualties in the colored troops, a large portion of the total number of men enrolled. The U.S. government awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor, first issued during the Civil War, to recognize gallant service to 24 African Americans.
I commend them brothers for fighting for our freedom. But now, we got to continue that fight for our freedom and not celebrate everybody's holiday. Make our own holidays, right? Celebrate the holidays that's in these scriptures. So with that, you could put it on us. Huh? Yeah, we got our own feast days that we supposed to celebrate. So I want to go here. Because our people have been protesting the wrong way for a long time. Let's go to 1 Kings chapter 8. We're going to read one of the prayers of our forefathers, what he wrote.
1 Kings 8 and what?
44.
8 and 44?
8 and 44. 1 Kings 8 and
skip, okay.
44.
1 Kings chapter 8, verse 44. If thy people go out to battle against their enemy.
See, this is the prayers that our forefathers prayed. He said, if thy people go out to battle. The children of Israel, we in a war already. We just ain't fighting back. And a lot of us trying to fight back but getting toe up because we don't know how to do it right. We got to get right with the Most High. And then we can go and do that in Leviticus 26 and not get toe up. But go ahead.
Whithersoever thou shalt send them, and shall pray unto the Lord toward this city which thou hast chosen.
So we got to pray to Jerusalem, where the Most High put his name. Right? Go ahead.
And toward the house that I have built for thy name, then hear thou in heaven their prayer and supplication.
He said,
and
hear him. He said, hear him. Yeah. And you know how the Most High felt about Solomon, right? But go ahead.
And maintain their cause.
See? Then the Most High will maintain our cause. But we got to get right. We can't be out here sinning, fornicating, worshiping idols, not praising and worshiping the Most High God. We can't be out here breaking his covenant, celebrating these folly days that the world set before us in ignorance. Can't do that no more. So let's go somewhere. Let's go to Deuteronomy 30. Yeah, go all the way to 8.
Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 1. And it shall come to pass, when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations whither the Lord thy God hath driven thee, and shalt return unto the Lord thy God, and shalt obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day.
So that's how he going to hear our cause. We got to return to the Most High and pray to him, as our forefathers did when they got in a skirmish, when they got toe up, when they went in iniquity. They prayed to the Most High. Our people ain't doing that today. They just trying to go out to war. But the enemy know we'll get toe up. Let's go hold that. Let's go to Judah 5 and 19. They know we'll get toe up in our disobedience. That's why they put all kind of stuff in your food, which is pork, and disguise it as something else, and don't even tell you defiled. So we got to be careful what we eat. We got to be careful where we worship at, right? Because what was one of the things that Frederick Douglass said was the white man's? That he used on us? Christianity. Mm-hmm. He said their Christianity and their God. Yeah. They used that against us. But go ahead.
Judith chapter 5, verse 17. And whilst they sinned not before their God, they prospered.
See, they already know when we don't sin before the Most High, we prosper. We can go to war with any nation. But if not, we getting what? Go ahead.
Because the God that hateth iniquity was with them. But when they departed from the way which he appointed them, they were destroyed in many battles very sore.
So we being destroyed over here in America. Wounded Knee. The what else? Because I did some research. Choctaw, Chickasaw, Seminole Indians, they was all destroyed. The land here was taken. 1717, the St. Louis riots. No, St. Louis massacre. You also had the Wilmington massacre, which happened in South Carolina. Our people were, Oh yeah, Trail of Tears. We getting toe up, y'all. When we gonna turn to the Most High and obey his voice? So we can go to battle. Because he said it's gonna happen. But go ahead.
And they were destroyed in battles, and many battles very sore, and were led captives into a land that was not theirs. And the temple of their God was cast to the ground, and their cities were taken by the enemies.
See, our enemies was taken, our cities was taken by our enemies. Now we're in the city of our enemies and can't fight back. So let's go back to Deuteronomy 30.
Deuteronomy chapter 30 and verse 3. That then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations, whither the Lord thy God hath scattered thee. If any of thine be driven out unto the outmost parts of heaven, from thence will the Lord thy God gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee.
See? When we in righteousness, the Most High will come get us. Go ahead.
And the Lord thy God will circumcise thine heart.
Which
and
is our mind, to keep his laws, his statutes, and his covenant. That's why we have to preach the word. And we have to say what thus saith the Lord. Go ahead.
And the heart of thy seed, to love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, that thou mayest live. And the Lord thy God will put all these curses upon thine enemies.
Wouldn't that be nice? Because our enemies got the upper hand, right? Because of our disobedience, because of our sinful nature, because of us breaking the covenant. But he said if we keep his laws, his statutes, and the covenant, he'll put all these curses on our enemies. They will be the weak ones. They'll be back in their rightful state, servitude. Let's get that in Isaiah. Was that all of that?
No.
Go ahead.
And the Lord thy God will put all these curses upon thine enemies, and on them that hate thee, which persecuted thee.
He said he going to put it on our enemies and them that hate us and those that persecute us. And we getting persecuted for no reason here in America. After all the atrocities, we still fighting for the same thing today. Rights to live. Rights to just be us. Right? We even celebrate the 4th of July just to have some fun. A lot of us, right? Because we want to get rid of the pain, the hurt, the anguish, because it's a fun day. But should we be celebrating it? What to the 4th of July as a slave? Nah, we shouldn't be celebrating. Let's get that out.
45:17.
Huh?
Isaiah 45.
Isaiah 14 and 2. Let's go to Isaiah 14 and 2. No, Isaiah 14 and 2.
Isaiah chapter 14 and verse 2. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids.
We'll be back in our rightful place. Our enemies will be servants and handmaids. Now read verse 1.
Verse 1. For the Lord will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel.
See, the northern and the southern kingdom coming back together. Ezekiel 37. We're going to be one stick. Go ahead.
And set them in their own land, and the stranger shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob.
But the stranger is going to be joined to us as servants. But go ahead.
And the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids.
This is talking about in the kingdom. Everybody ain't going to go as a ruler, but a lot of people going to go as servants. But go ahead.
And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were.
Who we going to take captive, y'all? Esau, the Edomites. This right here in the Bible. This is prophecy that's going to come to pass. Yep, go ahead.
And they shall rule over their oppressors.
Mm-hmm.
And it shall come to pass in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow, and from thy fear, and from the hard bondage wherein thou wast made to serve, that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon, and say, how hath the oppressor ceased?
That's it. That's all I needed. Because that's the only way we're going to fight for freedom in captivity, is to keep the Most High's God laws, his statutes, and his covenant, and stop practicing the nature of these wicked nations. And with that, I say, Kwam Yasha Allah. Don't celebrate the 4th of July. Thanks. Any announcements?